You ever felt like life just won't stop coming at you? Like you're juggling so much that if one more thing drops, you're going to drop with it? Jordan Peterson dives into this idea of explaining how most mental illnesses aren't purely biological, but they often come up from life becoming overwhelmingly complex. Let's break this down, like I would break it down, and see how we can find clarity and resilience when life feels like it's spiraling. Watch this.
Go back to the complexity problem. See, I actually think it's in some sense, it's the fundamental problem. When you read about the terror management theorist types, they think that death is the fundamental problem. And that's a good argument because it's definitely a fundamental problem, but I think it's a subset of the complexity problem. And the reason I think that is because sometimes people's lives become so complex that they'd rather be dead. So, and the reason they seek death through suicide is to make the complexity go away, because complexity causes suffering if it's uncontrolled. You know, things just get beyond your control. And that can happen, you know, if you're hit by 3 or 4 catastrophes at the same time. You know, maybe you have, the political system collapses, there's hyperinflation, you lose your job, and you have someone that you love or 2 people die, and maybe you get cancer, something like that. Like that, those things happen to people, and they just think, well, there's no getting out of this. Like, it's just too much. And you know, one of the things that's very interesting about being a psychologist is that what you learn if you're going to be a psychologist is that people come to you with mental illnesses, and that's almost never true. People come to you because their lives are so damn complicated they cannot stay on top of them in any way that doesn't make it look like they're just going to get more complicated. And so then that causes symptoms. You know, it's like, there's this old idea, it's sort of a metaphor for genetic susceptibility. Take a balloon and blow it up until it's beyond its tolerance, it's going to blow out at the weakest point. Well, that's sort of what a genetic susceptibility is. If I just keep adding complexity on top of you, at some point you'll blow out at your weakest point. You know, maybe you'll get physiologically ill, maybe you'll start drinking, maybe you'll develop an anxiety disorder, maybe you'll get OCD, maybe you'll get depressed, whatever. There'll be something about you that's the weakest point, and if I just push, that's where you'll blow out. So that's a mental illness, but those things almost never just happen. Sometimes, but not very often. Usually people have just been hammered like 2 or 3 different ways, and then they collapse in the direction of their biological weakness, and then maybe you put them back together, but it's almost always a complexity related phenomena rather than a mental illness related phenomena. Not always, but almost always.
He hits on such a powerful point here. The complexity, that sense of life becoming too chaotic to control, is really often the real cause of emotional breakdowns. And the way he's describing it, what many of us, especially men balancing work, family, faith, what we feel like when life's challenges are stacking up. It's like trying to carry 100 different responsibilities on your shoulders, and then suddenly one extra thing, even how small it is, causes a collapse at your weakest point. That might be anxiety, depression, other symptoms like that. But in my work, I see this play out a lot. A guy doesn't just catch depression like you catch a cold. It's often the result of multiple life stressors, like I'm dealing with some grief and financial struggles and relationship tensions, and they're all piling up without this support or an outlet. And in Jewish wisdom, what we learn about is this concept called bitachon, which is trust in God. But there's a nuance to it. Trust doesn't mean ignoring the weight you carry. It's about facing that complexity with this inner alignment. Like, I know who I am. I know where everything's coming from. I know what I'm deeply connected to, because you're not meant to handle it all alone. You need some sort of reflection. Maybe it's professional support, or, you know, going to a workshop, unpacking what's overwhelming, and be able to have a place where you can reconnect with your essential self, who you really are. Because that divine spark that's within all of us, it keeps you centered no matter how chaotic things get. What do you think about all this?